Welcome to the Versa Business Tips Podcast. I'm your host, founder and CEO of Versa Business Systems, Shaheen Mazloum. We're here with a guest today, consultant, author, Alejandro Salazar.
Yeah,
How are you doing today, Alejandro?
very good, Shaheen. Thanks. You spelled it
Good,
right,
good.
man.
Thanks for hopping on with us today. So, for those out there that don't know who you are, tell us a little bit about yourself, what your company does. You have a new book coming out, I understand, right?
Yeah. I'm a consultant. I worked all my life, mostly in Latin America. I started my career in the U.S. in a famous premier consulting firm out of Cambridge, and I have worked all my life in strategy consulting, and throughout my practice and my work and understanding the real world of strategy, I came to the conclusion that the biggest trap and the biggest failure was the governing paradigm, which was, I think I can summarize it in strategic planning. I understood that strategic planning was a failed proposition,
Right.
and practicing my way, which was very successful, I ended up discovering that I was following certain principles. So what I set to do was let's extract those principles, and let's for the first time produce a theory, because strategy is full of methods, but it lacks a theory. So what I did is I created this theory out of my practice. I wrote a book after so many years of successfully practicing it. A lot of people would tell me, write a book, write a book. So I wrote a book, and I actually self-published, and it turned out to be the best-selling book in my country very soon, and
Wow.
it is now the a bestseller in other Latin American countries. So I decided to cross over into the Anglo market and go back to my intellectual origins, and so I translated the book into English, and here we are.
Very cool. Very cool. So, strategic planning, for those out there that aren't really sure what the end goal of strategic planning is, tell us a little bit more about strategic planning and what the end goal really is.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing is to realize that strategic planning, it really is a theory. It's a bad theory, but a theory nonetheless. I mean, a lot of people, consultants, practitioners, professors, everybody somehow agrees that companies have to have a strategic plan to be successful. That a plan is a set of objectives and actions and initiatives and programs, and many of those things come from observing, not really observing the market, but more kind of aspiring
Yeah.
to trends, following trends, for example. And
Hmm.
so people put those things together, and those things, they become the strategic plan, a set of objectives, plans, programs, and then those things supposedly guide the execution of the company in theory, in a trajectory of success.
Right.
That's kind of the governing paradigm. Is so pervasive that people wouldn't even notice. And the thing is that the thing is very ineffective. It's a total failure in
Things
two
change too
domains.
much.
Yeah, in two domains. The
Yeah.
most fundamental is that you know 70-80% of the plans don't really get executed. So they
Plans change.
typically, yeah, because change, because human nature. But turns out really that, and consultants that sell strategic plans then go to the clients and tell them that what failed wasn't the plan but the implementation.
Yeah.
That's like a general story that you hear.
Yep.
And then the second thing is that even those that manage to, at a very a huge cost of complexity, manage to execute some of it, turns out the thing doesn't deliver. So the whole thing is a white lie. It's a big lie. It's captured the attention. I mean, a huge industry of, you may know, Shaheen,
Yeah.
consultants, software providers. Everybody is doing that. When a plan fails, interestingly, when a plan fails, typically gets replaced by another plan.
Yeah.
Sadly, so that's kind of the farce that I discovered. It's all
So
over
it
the
just
world. I
keeps
mean,
going round and
yeah,
round and
it's
round. Yeah.
actually universal. I mean, you see it
Yeah.
all over in all cultures, all languages, all corporate environments.
Yeah.
So the first thing that I did was, okay, let's call this a theory. Why is it a failed theory? I mean, so my first chapters, I go and demolish the idea, why that could not be a theory. I mean,
Right.
I
Why
work
it
in theory.
doesn't work. Yeah.
Why it doesn't work exactly? And so then, many people before me had done a little bit of that. I mean, thinkers like Henry Mintzberg, even Mike Porter himself, had already suggested that. They had already suggested that a plan is not a strategy, but then they hadn't really provided an alternative. So remember that people use what they can use, not what is good. So
Right.
in the absence of an alternative, people would still go back to your practices. So what I did
Yep.
was, okay, not only let's demolish this thing, but let's create an alternative. Then
Yeah.
if a strategy is not a plan, then what is a strategy and what is a credible process to arrive to a strategy, to get to a strategy? And
Yeah.
that's the theory. And that's actually a thing, a theory, because more than methods, of which, like the philosopher used to say, there are many.
Yeah.
The important thing is to have principles that you can follow and build your own methods.
Yeah. Okay. So the idea of the book is to show that a strategy with a set plan is not really a strategy at all, because the plan is going to change as the markets change, as people change, as the world around you changes, right?
Yeah.
So the emergent strategy, some would say, well, that's just another strategy.
Yeah. I mean, interestingly, the first thing you need to do is to abandon the idea of the plan. A
Yeah.
plan will not get you to a strategy. A plan is not a strategy. And the idea that a plan is a strategy, which is encapsulated in a strategic planning, is the
Right.
worst idea.
Yeah.
The worst idea in management is the idea that the plan is a strategy. Now, once you kill the plan, then the question remains: what is a strategy?
Yeah.
A strategy, and that's kind of the posit, and I obviously built upon a lot of many thinkers, many of which are American, by the way. A strategy. The question is, what is a strategy? First, what is a strategy? And the second question is, how do you how can you generate, engender, create, discover a strategy?
Right.
So the first question is, what is a strategy? A strategy, then, as I said to you, is not objectives, it's not plans, it's not programs. Strategy, as Mike Porter used to say, is hard choice. The result of a strategy is a set of very hard choices. They're
Right.
hard because you're basically giving up on a lot of attractive, interesting, sexy things and focus on a set of things that make you unique in the market. The whole idea is that the winners in the markets are unique companies. And
Right.
the cost of uniqueness is hard choice. If you
Yes.
were unique without exercising hard choices, you'd be easy to imitate.
Yes.
So the real output of a strategy is a set of hard choices. That that idea has been around since 1996 when Mike Porter, the famous and premier American thinker, proposed that. He said strategy is about being dad. It's still one of the, I think it's the second most downloaded paper in HBR in history.
Hmm.
Now the idea was there, so he said strategy is this. But then he wasn't really very interested in how to get to those set of choices. That was kind of the real challenge, the humongous challenge. What you would say in French, the bête noire of strategy would be how. Okay, if I buy you the argument that strategy is about being unique and the cost of it is a hard choice that the organization has to exercise, then how
Right.
do you get organizations to exercise hard choices if the thing is difficult even for persons, for individual people? I mean, life is about that.
Right.
So that was what was cooking, and that was why Porter's ideas didn't revolutionize, as I think they should have, the world of strategy. That paper was published in 1996, and
Wow.
25 years after that, strategic planning still reigns. Still,
Yeah.
so I had to borrow some more ideas from other thinkers. There's a guy, Henry Mintzberg, Canadian, who
Hmm.
had said how not to. This is very delicate and very important. He said a plan will never get you to a strategy. He didn't say what would get you, but he said the process of planning, deliberate planning, would never get you to a strategy. So I guess when I started my journey, I knew what a strategy was and was not, and I
Right.
and I knew the process that was not going to lead to a strategy. That was what I found in the battlefield.
Right.
So the idea was, okay, what is the process that could get you to a strategy? And that's exactly the idea of emergence. A strategy, totally in a totally contrarian way to planning, is about first and foremost doing. So the first thing is more than aspirations, declarations, and ideal things that you're supposedly going to do in your life or with your company. A strategy is first and foremost about what you are doing.
Yeah.
Most of the exercises in planning don't start off by that reflection.
Right.
So
It starts off with a plan.
exactly. So it's actually the world backwards. You have to
Yeah.
understand, and you will be surprised as to how many companies and CEOs and management teams don't really know what their companies are doing. So the emerging strategy is to start reflecting upon what you are doing and have been doing, and then
Right.
what happens is that the market, Mr. Market, the real authority, doesn't really care about your declarations or aspirations. It only cares
Right.
about what you did as a company, and
Right.
it will give you feedback.
Yeah.
Most of the feedback via cash. It will give cash flow to valuable things, and it will
Right.
take away cash flow from non-valuable
From
things.
invaluable. Right.
So you will be surprised that most of the information systems in companies are designed not to see that. So
Right.
they live in this vacuum. They live in this glorified planning and budgeting cycles.
So the
So
start of just to slow down a little bit. So to make sure we got this right. So the start of the emergent strategy
yeah,
is to figure out exactly what you're doing
yes,
and figure out what is working, what is not working
exactly. In your
by
word,
measuring the capital that is coming from the things that you're doing.
exactly. So
Got it.
once you reach mindfulness as to what you're doing,
Yep.
I call it in my theory. I call it you know that the first law of life is that there are a lot of unintended outcomes. The market will
Yes.
speak to you, interestingly, about the unintended things. That's what
Right. Your intentions don't matter. What
don't
is
matter exactly.
happening is what matters.
And that's what is actually beautiful, because this theory unifies the whole world of startups with established corporations. The
Yes.
startups or corporations, the market will give you feedback via unintended outcomes that it
Yep.
will show you via cash what is that you do that is valuable, and
Yep.
what is it that it isn't.
Yep.
And that, and so what activates is a process of discovery and breakthrough. People don't like to see those things. So
Mm-hmm.
most companies are organized to not see those things and to be defensive about them, and
Yep.
to change topics when you bring that up on the table and the conversation. So the emerging strategy is out of the clash. I call it the clash with the marketplace of your doing with the marketplace. You will get at some point results that cause you dissonance, and the dissonance is, there are some results that I didn't mean, that I didn't want, that are happening, good or bad. At this point, we're not
Right.
making most of the times what we discover is that a company has 80% of the cash in 20% of the products.
Right.
That they didn't want that, they didn't plan that, but that's what's happening.
Yeah.
So once you see that, you enter in dissonance. Dissonance is, remember, is the psychological, individual, and collective phenomenon where people wanna stick to the paradigms and deny that something is happening. You enter in denial.
Right. In denial. Yeah.
Exactly. And it happens at the level of a collective intelligence, which
Oh,
typically runs
for
an
sure.
organization.
Yep.
So the critical part of my theory is that once you overcome that dissonance via a breakthrough, once you accept and you see and you reframe
Right.
reality and you say, okay, now I understand. For example,
Right.
recently we just discovered that a company that had an abandoned brand, that abandoned brand was really the core brand, and they weren't
And they
organized
abandoned it.
because
Right.
it was old. Once they brought it up back into the center, once you reframe, once you accept, that's what we call real learning, not
Right.
education, but learning.
Yeah.
Then you enter that breakthrough, unleashes a domino of changes in what I call a theory of the business. People quickly, like in science, once you break a paradigm, that paradigm topples a lot of other ideas,
Yep.
and your corporate mind kind of reconfigures, and that's exactly when you become ready for what the other message I told you about was there, the hard choice. What I learned is that it was impossible for any organization to exercise a hard choice hadn't it previously been gone through a process of breakthrough and dissonance
Right.
that they overcame.
Right.
So the
Right.
myth,
Because you don't know what the hard choice is.
And not only that, you would never summon the courage to do it. You would talk about it,
Right.
you would
Right.
intellectualize it, but you will never exercise it. So
Right.
the secret, if hard choice is the secret of a strategy, learning or breakthrough, that's why my firm is called Breakthrough, is the
Right.
secret of hard choice. People will never make hard choices based on recommendations.
Yes.
People can only make a hard choice if they see it
Yeah.
and they
It's gonna
suffer
be
it through a
internal.
process.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's what I think, and the whole idea,
And they
strategy
have to
emerges.
suffer. They have to suffer through the process
Exactly. No
of
pain, no gain.
getting to the realization. Yeah.
No pain, no gain. It's easy to be talking about trends and what. Remember, most failed companies are trying to be another company,
Yeah.
and most successful companies are being themselves. So
Yes.
it's easy to be talking about things and plans and other people and trends and AI and technologies,
Yep.
and then it's very hard to reflect upon yourself. So what I
Yep.
do is
I love that you said that because there's all these gurus and speakers out there that always say, "Don't reinvent the wheel. Don't reinvent the wheel." Somebody's done it before you. Just do what they did. But
it,
like you said, that's the reason why 90% of businesses fail in the first year because you're trying to copy somebody else. And
totally.
most of the time, you're copying the wrong person anyway.
Exactly. I mean, just like in biology, I mean, the markets work like the biosphere, No,
Yes,
no species, if two species feed in the same way and live in the same ecosystem, one kills the
it
other
doesn't work. Yeah,
one. So exactly. So the idea, and the intellectual argument was strategy is about being unique. Uniqueness comes from hard choice, but hard choice cannot be recommended to you, and you cannot make a
until,
hard choice based on other people. It has to be your
right.
own process of rupture, breakthrough, discovery,
Yep.
and so that's what I learned. That's really what I was doing all my life, and that's what I really
Wow.
came to realize as the set of principles.
Well,
And so
this is the reason. This is the reason why I tell people all the time, KPIs are the most important piece of any business. If you don't know exactly what your KPIs are in every single part of your business, you're never going to get to realize what's working, what's not working. You're never
but
going
but
to
but,
get
but
to
watch
the
but,
end.
but watch it there, Shaheen, because the problem with KPIs is, I mean, it's not about having too many, and many KPIs become kind of
Right.
industry standards. This is
Yes.
more, of course, when you discover something in the market, I'll finish the story as to
Hmm.
where the hard choice ends. But obviously, the key message is it depends on the company you are. You should measure what matters to you. You shouldn't
Right.
measure what's so. For example, I mean, a lot of companies get killed trying to. For example, I'll give you an idea. The worst KPI, market share. That's the fool's gold.
Yes.
And a lot of companies have that, and a lot of companies actually think that you should have some sort of kind of hygienic set of KPIs plus two or three that are identitary. I don't think so.
Right.
It's not
Right.
having many, and even tell me what you measure, and I know who you are. The secret of companies is measuring really from identity. So yes, when you discover these unintended outcomes that eventually make you reframe reality and go through a breakthrough, typically what you get to your consciousness is that you should be measuring some things and not others. For example, this company that I told you about discovered that they weren't measuring their brands well. Had they measured their brands well, they would have discovered that the abandoned brand was the top brand. So
Right.
the problem was they were measuring the wrong things. So at the end, you end up with a lot of transformation. But I think a lot of it has to be with, look, you cannot be unique thinking like others. You
Right.
have to you have
Correct.
to think different to be different,
Yes.
and think different requires a lot of courage.
Yep.
Interestingly, in my theory, I mean, I don't advise business plans, so I advise working companies. And most of the
Right.
working companies that always come to my consulting services, I always tell them, look, what I do know is that you're alive. So there may be a lot of valuable things that the market is telling you about you because you're here. You can pay me my fees, and you're here alive. If you were an Excel, I wouldn't know that. So that's kind of
Right.
my trick. I know the guys are alive. I know they have a lot of value, and I know they're probably misunderstanding their value equation.
Right.
So that's
Interesting.
kind of the story. So the word emergent. Remember, nothing can emerge that didn't exist before.
Right.
So
It was
it's really what
already there. You just got to find out what it is.
exactly. So the keystone of my theory is that strategy is some sort of a trinity, and this doesn't have to be religious.
Right.
Trinity in the sense of inseparability. Strategy, and I'll give you what strategy is in my theory, none of which is a plan. A strategy is what you do.
Right.
So if you don't start off by reflecting upon what you're doing, you're dead.
Yeah.
A strategy in a second, intimately connected dimension, but different dimension, is strategy is a set of paradigms that live in a box of paradigms I call the theory of the business. So in a second dimension, a strategy is a theory of the business.
Right.
Remember, many people write business plans, but they never really. I've read so many plans
Yeah.
that people
And it
don't tell
never
you
goes. Yeah.
these are my assumptions.
Yeah.
So plans are full of assumptions that aren't really recorded.
They're not
So,
real.
and the third dimension, which is very interesting, is a strategy is how you are organized. It's organization. Remember,
Right.
in planning, there's this dichotomy that says that the plan is some sort of a software and the organization is some sort of a hardware, and the hardware runs the software. That's a very bad idea. I mean, it's
Right.
like in biology. In biology, you cannot change the software of an animal for another animal.
Right.
So in the marketplace, a strategy is how you're organized. So your strategy is how your company is organized. Many people try to change plans with the same organization. So once you have those three things, I think you notice that those three things existed beforehand, and you let them
Right.
emerge in a coherent way. That's what I
Wow.
that's what I call it. Other authors call it too the
Yeah.
emergent approach towards strategy.
That's incredible, man. Wow. It's these are things, when people listen to this podcast, people are going to realize how did we not know this before? Like you really opened my eyes. I mean, it makes perfect sense, but because you find yourself telling all the time, oh, the plan changed, the plan changed, the plan changed, because the plan is always going to change.
Exactly.
Always. I mean, for the most part, right?
Exactly.
Especially with growing and scaling a company,
Right.
right? If you're just a lemonade stand and all you sell is lemonade, okay, you can have a plan. The plan is to go to the end of the driveway, put the lemonade, sell the lemonade, and whatever. But if you're trying to build something great, a real, company, the plan is never gonna be it's not gonna be what happens, right?
Exactly.
Um,
The plan is some sort, like in physics, is an ether that at the end you didn't need. I
right.
mean, you can do away with the plan and nothing happens. Even in your example with the lemonade,
Yeah.
their strategy is to actually go and stay in that corner.
Right.
That's the doing. Strategy
Yeah.
is doing.
Yeah.
Starts with doing, and it's better to recognize that than to kind of, delude yourself thinking that, first I do a plan and then try to implement it. So
Right.
yeah, but what you're saying is true. Is
It starts with action. Action is the most
action.
important piece of anything. If you're not taking action,
There's no
your plan or your strategy or none of that matters.
exactly, and interestingly, that's exactly the point. I mean, you were right in pointing out that good theories, once you understand them,
Right.
make obvious that a lot of what you were trying to do in the alternative theories were solving the wrong problem.
Right.
The implementation problem, for example, doesn't exist in emergent strategy because you start off by reflecting upon what you're doing.
Right. Yeah, you're
So
starting with the
that you
doing.
exactly because that's the big problem of the other side. So, for example, it reinterprets strategy as doing, clashing with the market and learning. Yeah,
Yeah.
and in so doing, it actually creates. So, I was shocked as to the how many startups were interested in my theory, and I have never really worked with startups. The thing is that the emerging strategy
They're
is
the
a
ones that need
unified
to.
theory that
Yeah.
explains startups as much as established companies. But by the way, I always tell people if you need a theory of strategic planning for big companies and a lean startup for startups, if you have two theories for the same phenomenon, you know that the theories are bad, are wrong.
Right.
I mean,
Yep.
you don't need two theories for the same phenomenon. So the emergent strategy explains both what happens in good startups, why startups go astray and lose their
Yeah.
track because they start following investors and not the market, and
Right.
also explains by the same phenomenon how all good companies were startups and became
Yes.
bureaucratized and lost the
Wow.
ability to learn.
dude, I am so excited to read your book. Where
Oh man, I want you so badly to read it and to share it with your audience because I think there's
absolutely.
something there.
Absolutely. I plan on it, man. I mean, we're on a, as far as our company, we're on the verge of really growing to the next level. And you bring up
Yeah,
some very valuable points. I mean, it's similar to what we've been doing. We have a plan, so to speak, but I'm not naive enough to think that the plan is going to be the plan, right? Because the plan is never the plan. It doesn't matter what, how much you try, it's never going to be the plan. And I've been reading this book, Good to Great, and what you're
that's a good one. That's a good
describing
one.
is very similar to what these guys did, right? They're
Yeah.
all unique. All the great companies are unique. They all are very self aware,
Well,
right?
yeah,
They see they're not what's the word that you used, they're not in denial,
yeah,
right? So a lot of the same stuff,
yeah.
to add. I mean, your book, Emergent Strategy, with this book is like a steroid for
Yeah,
businesses.
you're right. I'm glad that you brought Jim Collins. I mean, I admire him. I think he's a great writer, and I think you're right.
Yeah,
And some other, all I did, remember, when you're building theory, you're always standing on shoulders of giants, like Hawking
yeah,
used to say. I mean, obviously, I built upon James, Mike Porter's, Henry Mintzberg's,
right.
Roger Martin's ideas,
Yep.
and I guess my contribution was to connect those two things. So, if the what of a strategy is choice, how is the process that gets an organization to exercise hard choices? The
Yep.
book is the Emergent Strategy. It's available in Amazon all over the world. You guys can visit your audience can visit my website,
Yeah,
theemergentstrategy.com.
I'll
Uh,
put the website in the description. That way, people can get right to it, and so they can right from the website they can buy it from
yeah, they can
Amazon.
buy it, and
Great.
yeah, it's a this time I guess it's a book coming from Latin America, not from North America, but that also happens, and we should get used to it. Ideas
Yeah,
come from whenever they are well built.
absolutely.
So that's kind of the story, but I think you got the knack of it.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I am so excited to read this book. I think it really goes along well. I'm almost finished with this, so I think
That's a good one.
it's a very good one to. I mean, maybe even read at the same time. But I'm gonna go ahead and get that book as soon as we hop off here, man.
Interestingly, Shaheen, interestingly, just it's very, very, very hard to remember methods, and as I said, those aren't the solution. My book is distilled in 8 principles
Right.
that you practice to get to strategy, and that you ignore at your own fault. I mean,
Yeah, at your
that's
own demise.
a very simple process.
Yeah.
And as I said to you, I mean, I was not a professor who built a theory. I was a successful consultant that discovered he was doing something, and built it into a theory.
Yeah. Absolutely, man. It's And when did your book come out?
It came out 3 months ago. I mean, today it's very hard to get in all, bookstores in the US. It's
Yeah.
easier to get, your book in Amazon Depot,
Well, I
and
mean,
all
that's
over the
where
world.
that's where
Yeah,
everybody gets their books
yeah,
anyway.
yeah.
Nobody goes to the bookstore anymore.
Yeah, exactly. And
Very few people go to the bookstore. I
we're
can't tell you the
expecting to
last time
have
I was in a
in the
bookstore, but I
Olympic book
have books
the same.
everywhere. I don't remember the last time I
Yeah.
bought a book at a
All
bookstore.
right.
Maybe 20 years
You
ago.
know, we've been in the market for 3 months. We've been in the market for 3 months. It's doing, starting to pick up. It has been a huge success in Latin America, and we hope it's going to be the same in the US market. And I'm glad and open, to have more conversation with you and your audience. And I enjoy that you got the knack. It's very simple. I mean, you got it yourself. I would just simply point out that the questions that you raise about the growth, actually, in the emerging strategy, growth is a consequence of value. So if you're valuable, one of the consequences
Yeah.
that you're going to grow and scale. Don't try to scale before being
Yep.
valuable. Be valuable, and then once you
Yeah.
become
You
aware of
gotta
it,
have your
one
value. Yeah.
consequence will be you grow. Dissociating growth from value is the biggest sin I guess in the whole startup arena and even in Wall Street
Yeah.
throughout times.
Yeah, I think too many businesses try to scale before they've created true value. Yeah.
Exactly,
Couldn't agree
exactly,
more.
exactly.
Couldn't
That's a
agree more.
cardinal sin. So those things are there. It's simple. It's a theory, and as you said, once you read it, you'll say, I mean, many people tell me I knew these things. I say,
Right.
yeah, a lot of people knew it. A lot
But
of
if
people
we
knew it.
knew
I put
them,
it
then why
together. But
didn't we
yes, a lot
implement
of people
them, you
have
know?
knew it from, yeah, by heart. But
Yep.
you'll find yourself, and a lot of people will find themselves in the principles of the book for sure.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Alejandro, I appreciate you jumping on with us today. Everybody, make sure you go buy a copy of his book. I'm excited to see more from you as you blast this out to the rest of the U.S. And man, I wish you all the best in your success. I mean, this book is a game changer. I'm looking forward to reading it.
Hey, Shaheen, thanks a lot. That's the book. For people to take note, thanks for your time. Thanks for your generosity in letting me get to your audience. And
Absolutely.
whenever you want to continue the conversation and do double clicks about my theory, I'm up.
Yes, for sure. I'm looking forward to it.
Okay.
Thank you, Alejandro.
Thanks to you, man.